All right, welcome everyone to StarLadder and iLeague StarSeries Season 3. We're on was to day 7 or 8. I was eating, by the way. Clearly super professional casting right there.
What did
We've
you
got
eat?
I was eating cashews because I didn't find time to eat earlier. I'm just
Love
like
those,
cramming
man.
the highest calories, highest calorie I can for the time that we have. So, without further ado, let's just go over what the event is going to be like today. For us, we've got another day casting with 6 matches. Again, very high profile matches. We've got 3 more days of casting coming up, and we're nearing the end for the players here. Their scores are starting to get settled, and we're starting to see what the live finals will look like and where the last chance is headed.
Yeah, and the first match will be between Pavel and Kolento, and both. When you think about, let's say like that, when you think about those players, you don't think like, oh, they're in a bad spot. They're probably at the top of the group, and they're just battling for the first place. It's not the case this time. Both Kolento and Pavel have a 1 win and 2 losses, and now they're against each other. So one of them will actually be 1-3, which is something you don't usually see when it comes to those players.
Yeah, but the field was extremely stacked, I feel, this time around, and there's been this super weird tendency, I guess, with the metagame where it's settled towards aggression, but the deck lists were submitted earlier in the month, so on the 9th of May, and so
Mm-hmm.
the metagame there was still kind of incentivizing people to try, mid-range and control, but these lineups just have not been faring extremely well, especially the more controlly ones like Pavel and Kolentos.
Yep. Well, I guess who was the early player to discover that aggro is the way to playing, right? Will benefit of it in this tournament. As you said, they had to submit the decks on the early of May, and now we have 25th of May, and they still need to play it out, which is not a bad
Yep.
thing actually. You need to commit to a strategy, to a group stage when you have a round robin of seven games. And just to reiterate on the rules for the new viewers which don't know, 16 players, they're divided in 2 groups, 8 players. Each group, they play against each other, everyone against everyone, so 7 matches for every single player. First and second place is advancing to the LAN finals, and third and fourth place are playing in the last call tournament that will give the last spots for the ladder finals.
All right, so there's a lot at stake for these guys today, and the difference between going 0-4 and 1-3 is pretty big because if you're 0-4, you're effectively knocked out. One of these players is just not going to have a chance to go through, and that's pretty backbreaking. If you're these players, you come to these tournaments expecting to have a high chance of winning. We were still in the experimental phase of the metagame, and I feel like Kolento, with the results he's been putting out recently, probably did not anticipate the difficulty that he's been having in the StarLadder so far.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, I feel like those players, those high caliber players, can just still get back on it, right? Even if the decks are not that refined. I'm not saying that none of those players will just advance. I mean, they still have a chance. Getting from the
Yep.
fourth place, doable for both of them. Let's just stick to the games and see how it pans out, right? They still have a lot of games actually, 4 games each, right?
Yeah,
Including this one
so
today.
exactly, right? So we've got Pavel who's going to be playing 2 matches today. Kolento as well is going to be playing 2 of them. We have Dr. Hippie versus Orange that's going to happen as well. It's been a few days since we've seen Dr. Hippie play any of his matches. RDU is nearing also completion here. He's got 2 more matches, I think, to play in his
Yes.
group stage. He's been doing extremely well with the aggro lineup. Zalay has also been doing amazing with the aggro lineup. It seems to
Mm-hmm.
be the
Mm-hmm.
story of the event. The guys who brought the aggro druid, the quest rogue, the aggro or mid-range paladin in some cases have really been doing extremely well. And this is one of these setups for both players where they both have a control lineup. They at some point had to face off against each other, and this is gonna feel better for them than having to face off against the aggro, since that's what they're so weak to.
Well, it will feel better, but one guy will still be sad after this match, right? This cannot ever end in a draw, most likely. Even although we have it in the bracket, but I believe there's no possibility of drawing a match. Um, but as I said, Zalay and Radu are first in the standings, both with 12 points, with 5 matches done. The only player that completed the entire group stage so far is Neyria, who ended up with 5 wins and 2 losses in Group A. None other from the players did finish it yet. So will we actually have a Finnish player today? I don't think so, right?
I don't think any player is finishing their entire group stage today. There are still a few more days to go for to complete everything.
Yeah. Zalay will have one match today, so he will be at 6. The same for RDU, and that's about it.
Yep,
But
pretty much.
but if Zalay or RDU, either of them wins a match, then they are guaranteed basically to maybe not be still like first and second, but I assume one of them will be in this case.
So lineup wise here, we're looking at the Elemental Shaman. Well, Elemental, I call it Elemental. Really, it's more like the mid-range Shaman at this point with Flame Tongue Totems and Fireflies and all that good stuff. It's the typical Shaman approach, the old school Shaman approach to deck building. Running up into this lineup from Pavel, I think Pavel's on the mid-range Paladin build as well. You know, Shaman Dachi ended up opting for a I think control Paladin this time around, but in this case, Pavel chose to bring the mid range, so much more in line with what I'd expect from him. So those two mid range decks from Kolento, Shaman and Paladin, I think have a pretty good chance against Pavel's lineup.
Well, Pavel's lineup is sporting like a mid range control Paladin, as you said. It has Wicker Flame, an example, one equality only. So that's definitely problematic against those mid-range decks when you don't have ability to just clean up the board really easily, right? Which is something that usually Paladin has an easy access to after turn 4, basically, right? Because they have equality with Pyromancer, more in some of the decks, of course, not in everyone, and not in every single deck. But at the same time, now with only one equality, that's a little bit problematic. What was the ban for Pavel? It was a mage.
The mage, yes. The mage was banned. Well, I don't really see how the mage is both played and banned at the moment. There's definitely a glitch on the visibility. It looks like Pavel is going to be playing the warrior, paladin, as well as druid, I think.
Let me check. Kolento bans mage and Pavel bans druid. So the bans are correct, I would say.
So okay, but there's two mages on the screen with Pavel. He's playing and banning it, so clearly there's a druid somewhere.
In this case, he should have a warrior, a paladin, and a druid. Yes,
exactly. Because I would not have anticipated that mage to be left up by Kolento. It doesn't seem like a matchup he'd want to go up against. I mean, with any of the decks that he's looking at. So I much prefer seeing that that's what he's doing. The Jade Druid is a good deck. It's a really solid deck, but it's sometimes the type of deck, like when you have mid-range paladin and you've got that rogue, you're probably okay going up against it, as you can just rush them down, which is something that, and mid-range paladin is especially good at that. So Kolento's got about 2 out of 3 matchups that are favoring him just against that druid. And against the warrior, I guess it can get a little bit tricky if you don't line up the mid-range paladin or the rogue against it.
But the rogue has a chance to actually shine in this match.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just a Shaman easy win for it, unless the rogue will just blank on draws, and that can happen, right? But any decent draw should be good enough for Kolento to take at least one game, and it would be actually important to take a win with the rogue as soon as possible, because if you just let those good matchups for the rogue go away, then you might end up in a bad position.
Yeah, the Shaman for Kolento just doesn't seem like it's lining up against anything particularly well. I'm looking at this, and like his matchup against Jade Druid is probably not, fantastic. They're both jading, except the Druid does it in a much faster fashion. So cards like Flame Tongue Totem are going to come in super handy early in the game to snowball out of control. Kolento needs to get on the board fast, and that's pretty tough. Against mid-range Paladin, I think they're both playing a similar game style. Kolento's got a ton of AoE though, so might be able to equalize that matchup in his favor. Against the warrior though, I don't know if Kolento's Shaman is particularly well suited.
Well, it's a mid-range Shaman, right? And Pavel's warrior has access to 2 bros, so that's definitely an upgrade to his deck because of that, but still kind of lacks other like mass removals. He has 2 Primordial Drakes, which helps, but it's only 2 damage, so it's not pushing through those bigger minions. One Whirlwind, which is definitely not something that you want to see against the Shaman in general, which can be a bad draw. 2 Sleep with the Fishes can help, then that makes sense with the Whirlwind, but it's still, I feel like the Shaman can take this matchup, like, at least 50-50.
Yeah, it's no longer the old. Yeah, it's probably close enough to a 50-50, but we're not back in the days of Warrior where they just armored up and did nothing. They're playing pretty aggressively on curve, and Kolento's devolves against the Warrior are not as good as say against Pavel's Paladin, where that's the dream matchup for Kolento.
It's still not terrible because targets like Armor Smith,
Sure.
like Acolyte of Pain, Tar Creeper, um, what else? Actually, most of those taunts are not that bad to devolve.
It's mostly good because of the bloodlust. In this matchup, though, it looks like we're opening up with the expected tried and true Paladin opener, where you're just like, I can beat anything with this deck. It's just good. So I'm gonna jam it out first. It's a Conquest deck. Conquest format. I just want to win as many times as I can early. And we're gonna see what we've seen, I think, the most in the tournament, which is this mid-range Murloc Paladin. Kolento with the 1-drops is playing potentially more than Pavel, although I think we've seen that the 4 1-drops is sort of standard nowadays, right?
I would agree. Well, Kolento explosive opener, but unfortunately no Murloc for turn 2 yet, at least. Pavel can actually answer with the Hunter, which is not that bad. It guarantees a trade basically against Paladins, because there's
Unless
a
they
way of
rock pool,
responding.
right? If they
Well,
rock
the
pool
ro-
Hunter, you get wrecked.
Yes, but if you not play around, like if you play around it, you don't really stand a chance anyway. Like next play would be um just the Peacekeeper, and that doesn't really do much against a tight caller because it can grow again and trade with Peacekeeper. Well, you have two, so maybe you just want to keep it for that case because you
Yeah, I
always
think you
can
could
replay it.
tempo it out, or there's a chance Pavel plays this a bit slower, I think, than just trying to rush for the tempo, because he's already in the position of playing defense, just based on the 1-drop. Like we're talking about the 1-drop, and it sounds so absurd to say, oh yeah, Pavel is already on the defense, but it's true. He's definitely going
Mm-hmm.
to be looking for ways to clear before switching the game back in his favor.
Now with the Truce of a Champion, it actually changed a lot because then he can always plan around turn 3 Truce of a Champion. Consecration is good as well for this stage of the board, but of course we can see the War Leader, which can change a lot in this case. But when the War Leader will be dropped, then you always have the Truce of a Champion. But I like the Hunter. It's an like reassurance that you can always do something with your Truce of a Champion because you will have a target most likely. If there will be a War Leader that is trading with your Hunter, at least you can bait it out this way, right?
I wholeheartedly agree. I think this is one of the best lines that Pavel could have taken. Just try to force that trade. If there's a war leader, do you know there's no Cold Light Seer, as this is not an aggro paladin, so you're almost always going to get yourself a really good True Silver, and you're playing around Megasaur as well, since you're able to then set up the consec. Pavel with the 2 cards to answer wide boards is probably looking kind of okay here.
Now, I like the Inquisitor instead of the Megazord, obviously because of the fact that your opponent is sporting a Truce of a Champion right now, and you also get more attack with just playing 2 Murlocs. But at the same time, that Megazord might have problems now with getting full value until like turn 9 or 10, unless he draws Murlocs every single turn right now.
And this is awkward. Kolento here has the option of playing Tempo Megasaur, and I almost feel like you have to. If you pick up Taunt, are you happy?
Yeah, with Taunt,
I mean, it is the best, right? It's the best case scenario.
What else is good? Death Rattle is good because you can play on curve the Tarim or the Spikewood Steed, and that's a good plan because otherwise you don't have like anything that turn. And if you play that Megazord with a decent adapt, then your opponent will have to answer with the Truce of a Champion, and then he needs to play something on curve as well, most likely, right? If he just plays Hero Power, you're good. You know, you can just go for the Spikewood Steed if you have the Death Rattle effect or the Taunt, because you always have a target. So the Megazord seems like a really good option.
Yeah, I don't mind it, but Kolento is going to opt to set up Sunkeeper Tarim. He saw that his opponent was hesitating to use the charge on a single minion, so he's thinking, all right, he's waiting for Megasaur. He's probably going to be happy if I do it. I feel like I'm feeding into his game plan. Whereas if I play 2 1-1s, I have a leftover card for Spike Ridge, or just to play Sunkeeper, or even Megasaur. I guess this is more flexible, but I liked the idea of the Tempo Megasaur. This is more flexible, but I thought Megasaur was just the best way to pressure Pavel afterwards.
Well, it all depends how much does he value the aggressive opener, right? Look, in this case, he actually forced Pavel to use the Truce of a Champion on a measly 1-1. Which is amazing when you think about it. A second Megazord. Okay. Well, now I guess we know what has to be played. Although it's not really that obvious. You can clear the board with the Consecration. I'm not exactly sure. Let me check. I think Kolento plays with double equality. No, he plays with one equality. So the Consecration, one Consecration will not have that big of a value if you know that you will have to pair it up with the one single equality. So there's always a chance you will draw it. So it wouldn't be that bad of a choice, but at the same time he just went for the Spike Steed value when he knows he has it.
Yeah, the crazy thing too is that right now, Sunkeeper Tareem also has a benefit in the matchup to nullify Spiker Steed's potential. If the opponent plays it, keeping that play instead of going for the Steed, for instance, is just a way to debuff their stuff later in the game and set up those big Murloc boards at a later time. The awkward part for Kolento here is that this Kings is setting up, and this is not a play I see very often, Kings on Wickerfame Burn Bristle. It's not the most common thing, but it lines up so well here against the Stegodon that I don't know what Kolento's going to be forced to do. It just seems so awkward to go for the Consecration in this spot because you're leaving up only a 1-1 behind. Maybe a Repentance to go with it.
Went for Redemption, so he's not setting up a Consecration next turn. This has to be the Consecration this turn, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
But I think he's not really happy with the outcome of that Consecration being used. At least he gets that Blessing of Kings already out of the equation as well. Now, if that would have been a Repentance, he would have been so happy.
Yeah, there are so many minions in the deck, though, that Repentance does not matter much against. I don't think, like, there's in the deck enough Murlocs to probably stall the value of your Repentance. But Kolento here not willing to put in commit a secret that doesn't do very much, and he's setting up the Tyrion play, knowing full well that this is going to give him an extra Ashbringer over 2 turns. This is really tough for Pavel. Might have to use that Consec to trigger.
Yeah, that Construct is a good choice, I would say.
But Kolento,
he knows he doesn't have to do it yet. Like, the one attack Tyrion... The one attack Tyrion is actually not a threat because, you know, it will still be there next turn, and you will have the chance most likely to kill something else with the Consecration before you attack into it. So I kind of like it. Although if Kolento will sacrifice the Hydrologist and it will attack with the Tyrion into the Curator, then the Consecration will buffer on the Tyrion because it will be the first card played on the board. So it might not be that easy to set up.
So Gentle Megastore, all you're trying to do here is just trade away that Hydrologist so it doesn't soak up redemption value. That's definitely the... Oh, God. So he doesn't care about his redemption value on Consecration, is what it means. So he does not value getting the Tyrion guaranteed back? Interesting. Okay.
Oh, but that Coda was clutch.
Coda was essential here for Pavel, for Kolento not to get completely swarmed with Murlocs, because we saw him use the Consecration early in the game, right? In a spot where it didn't feel particularly good, you were leeching 2 1/1s and a Wicker Flame / Blessing of Kings. It was a little bit awkward.
Yeah, but can you imagine a trigger from the Finja followed by 2 Megazords?
Yeah. Usually spells good game for one of the players. And one of the biggest power cards in the matchup for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and give that redemption on the Hydrologist here.
Not bad. It's actually
right.
not that problematic for Pavel here at all.
No, Pavel's pretty happy. The Kolento is the one who said. I feel like there was a bit of an issue with the way he played out the Hydrologist afterwards. You know, he played Megastore on the Hydrologist, spawned the 1/1s.
Just sacrifice it. Right. That's something I just don't get. Like, he had 2 turns of attacking into a Curator with the Hydrologist. Of course, it just telegraphs what is your secret, but at the same time, playing a secret followed by Tyrion is usually redemption, so it's not like something completely out of the box, right?
So he's just setting up. He was just trying to set up the biggest Terran possible, is the assumption, right? Because if he takes a death rattle, then he values having the 3/3s on board. They're immune to consec more than anything else that he does. Like that's the only rational explanation. So you must know his opponent does not run any way to clear this. No equality. That's potentially true. We've seen some decks without any of them. So if there's no clear for this, you just get away with it. So it was a Sunkeeper Tarim setup more than anything else.
Alright, now with the Megazord value for 2 Murlocs, let's see what he will get. Poisonous, plus 3 health, okay. I mean, plus 3 health is not bad, although one of the Murlocs can die instantly after trade with the War Leader. That's still good. I didn't see the third option though under that. Probably something worthless if it just was so snap-picked by Pavel.
Can't be targeted by spells or hero power, so you can't even put Spiker Steed on them. Seems good. Oh man, these Murlocs are getting out of hand. So this was definitely Kolento making a heads-up play with that Sunkeeper setup we saw earlier. You know, he chose the Death Rattle effect. At first I was thinking this is definitely not going to be helpful. But if you look at it that way, he got the Redemption on the 2/2 back, plus the 2 Murlocs, which gave him effectively 3 extra bodies on the board instead of just the 1 big Tyrion. And that guarantees that he gets trading potential against any size of Pavel's board, unless Pavel consecrates before Sunkeeper is played, in which case you get slightly punished. So, in hindsight, maybe that was just the right play. You don't get the Divine Shield, but good enough.
Yeah. I mean, probably the game ends before you can even swing the second Ashbringer, so not that big of a deal, right? In this case.
That's the hope, right? You're looking to end the game fast if you're making that setup for Tarim. Definitely.
Alright, how much damage is actually on board? It should be enough, right? 5, 8, 11, 11, 14, 17, 18, 19, 24. From what I remember, at least.
$19, yeah, there's 24 on the board. Exactly.
Okay. That's quite a lot. Pavel can reduce 4 damage from the board by the Peacekeeper, but it's still not enough. True Silver Champion will heal for 2, but it will have to attack into 1. So yeah, there's no way of getting out of this situation. The Consecration didn't have any value at all. Like without the second equality, the deck really struggles to clear up the board. At the same time, it has the promise of doing that, so your opponent will most likely not overextend until the point when he is certain that you're lacking the ability to clear the board, which can be really easily read if it's played out correctly by one of the players. So kudos to Kolento here. We were pointing out those weird plays with Hydrologist, but in the end, it was actually a good setup for the Tarim and ending the game in just free swings of Ashbringer, basically.
Yeah, and that was pretty much the way Kolento wanted to play this out, end the game early. Because for the long play, I mean, Kolento getting the Ashbringer back would be better. But if he's thinking, I've seen 1 consec, I don't need to play around anything else. If I just set up Tarim, there's no answer to it once there are 3/3s. 100% correct. And that was the way to play the matchup out. And now, I think he's running into another matchup he's comfortable with, given the amount of AoE in his deck. For those of you who did not see that Shaman deck, it's a deck that contains Lightning Storm, double Maelstrom Portal, double Devolve, and there is no deck against which Devolve is better than a Murloc Paladin, from what I've seen. It's better against the aggro versions, definitely better against aggro, but it's also pretty solid against the mid-range lists.
Yeah, I mean you can play around. That's what I want to say. You can't play around the Devolve when you have Kozak, Spike Seed, Blessing of Kings, Tyrion, all those secret, right? Redemption is actually horrible and against Devolve, because you will just get most likely a really random minion back to your hand, most likely even a Wisp. So that's definitely problematic. And the only value that can get out of the Spectred Steed of Blessing of Kings if you can play it on a minion that can already attack and get instant value out of the attack. And of course, Hex is always problematic. Don't forget about that.
There's almost nothing that's not problematic, right? Like everything just eventually punishes you. The biggest swing cards, I guess, in the Paladin's deck are that equality that we see here. Because once the Jade Ball gets rolling for Kolento, things get a little bit awkward for Pavel unless he can clear. So Sunkeeper Tarim to negate the board state, and Equality, Consec, Primordial Drake, those are amazing cards. The weapon usually extracts decent value. But the fact that they keep spawning totems to your Murlocs, usually that's like an equal opportunity or like the equal value. But when the Shaman has so much efficient board clears, you're falling behind in the matchup. And Kolento runs Bloodlust, as we know. So any board that he has is representing lethal very early.
Yeah, you can just go for just totems, not even play anything else on the board, and benefit from the mouse and portals, and still threaten the game just by having Bloodlust in his deck. It doesn't have to be played right now. All right, we have the Stone Shaper right now in Kolento's hand, but to be active for turn 4, Kolento is pushed to use his Flame Elemental. But in this case, is it even any good? You can go for the Mouse and Portal, trade with the Inquisitor. War Leader is unfortunately still on the board, so most likely you would like to answer with the Jade Lightning next turn, but at the same time, what you can do is you can Hex, kill the Frog, and leave the Inquisitor, which will be a 1-2.
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of just Hero Power Flame Elemental, personally, because I think what you're doing is you're not like in a rush to kill what's there. You're mostly looking to set up the Tol'vir. This is the next best thing. Like, the second play is just play Maelstrom to get the 1-drop. But the idea is that you need to set up that Tol'vir or that Jade Lightning, because the Flame Elemental and whatever 1-drop you get probably contests the 3-2. He cannot possibly play Cold Seer, it's not in the deck, and Megazord doesn't come out until 1 next turn. So you're probably always getting the kill on that War Leader with whatever 1-drop you have.
And also Truce of the Champions, just 1 mana and away. That's the thing when you play Paladin. You just lack an answer for turn 2 or 3, right? The only like synergy and interaction that you will have on those turns is basically the Rockfin Hunter that can be played on a Murloc that you played on turn 1. And this is like the snowballing effect in that deck. But other than that, you're kind of lackluster. And look at that, Stone Shaper is such a fantastic card on turn 4 against Paladin. That Truce of a Champion just does nothing.
Yeah, we saw this in the tournament quite a few times. We saw RDU actually set up he was playing Quest Rogue and set up a Tol'vir Stone Shaper like 3 turns ahead of time, and the Paladin just lost to that one card. It just shut him down completely. And this is the power of the card. It lines up well because the Divine Shield requires they have stuff on the board. Then they need to have an extra ping, so they need 2 pings and a weapon charge to kill a 3/5. And usually you're able to get tempo while developing the stuff that sets it up. So it's very difficult for the Paladin to answer the Tol'vir Stone Shaper. So while the card is not as widely played as we all assumed it would be initially, it's been starting to see a lot more play than we saw at first.
It's very similar to Talk Creepers, right? It's like sometimes they pop out in multiples, sometimes they're just one-off, and everyone suspected them to be like one of those meta shapers, right? But they're not.
Right.
But they're still great cards. Well, the Kodo is not really the best one to play it right now. You can get not that much value out of it.
Yeah, and you're playing into what's on the board already, killing your stuff. That's the thing. You know full well your board is going away. Yeah. You've got the weapon and the 3/3 that can trade into your Kodo, and then the Shaman has leftover mana to do this. Worse yet is when he's got Jade Lightning, Thing from Below to even just play Totem and the 3 cost of it. That's another possibility. There are a lot of plays Shaman has that they can make here that simply make your Kodo irrelevant.
I like the Jade Lightning though instead of the Thing from Below. Thing from Below will still have more impact on the board by being reduced to just 1 or 0 mana. Like that's the perfect scenario, of course. You develop the board at the same time with the 2/2, which is still problematic with the Bloodlust, because the Bloodlust right now is 12 damage. 12, 15, 16, 18 damage just next turn if you don't do anything with this board. So bearing in mind that your opponent will still develop the board, every single now state of whatever will be happening on the Shaman is problematic for the Paladins. At some point, he needs to take care of the entire board. And if Pavel will not do that at a critical point where Kolento can have just lethal with Bloodlust, then that gives information for Kolento. There is no way of clearing the board for Pavel.
There's also the reads that Pavel makes of the cards in hand. Kolento picks up probably one of the best draws to play here. I was going to say all the cards are a little bit overkill in his hand. Thing from below is nice. You're not really setting up anything with this. But now picks up the best tempo play he could have gotten. And this is going into a turn where Pavel's just got complete air. Well, never mind.
Until
plans.
until this draw.
Oh, man. What a back and forth.
But still, it's not perfect. Like, there's a 5-1 and a 3-1 on the board. You can kill one. But Aya still gives you a 4-4. Alright, Noble Sacrifice can help, because it can stop the attack of the 3-1 Jade Golem. So that's okay. Eye for an Eye, not really that useful. It's not a mage class. And your opponent is still at healthy 23. So even one swing with like 6 or 8 damage doesn't really matter. And it will not even happen anyway. So
I like Repentance a lot. You're targeting all the big stuff left, right? You've seen the Fireflies, you've seen the Elementals, so you're down to the Flame Elemental. So you're down to like the Fire Ellies, the Kalimos, the Thing from Below. Those are the big things.
I think Kolento doesn't even play Servant of Kalimos, although it's such a powerful card.
I think he's playing the actual legendary itself, but not the 5 drops.
Yeah. But no Servants of Kalimos. When we saw the first iterations of Elemental Shamans, they were all playing Servants because they are such a powerful card. But at the same time, they are just too slow for the decks that just want to thrive on the board state, right? Well, that's a good Primordial Drake, I would say.
Yeah, talking about thriving on the board state, that Repentance setup was magnificent. That Fire Elemental got sniped down to 1 health. The only card I think that Pavel did not want to see at that point was a Jade Spirit, because it made the Jades from Aya spawn a 5/5, and then there was a 4/2 left over. But the fact that it was Fire Elemental or Thing from Below in this case basically gave Pavel a full board clear, which was pretty soul-crushing for Kolento. But he's got hexes. He's good to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. He went for the Thing from Below instead of Fire Elemental. So the plan is to have like a small charge minion in your hand, basically. That's what you gain from doing this by playing instead of the Fire Elemental for bigger output of damage on the board by 1 and clearing the hex target immediately. You still have access to some damage next turn on the same turn. All right, that's a good.
Seems about good.
Yeah, that's a beneficial use of a useless frog that you have in your hand. So there was a small like reason to play Fire Elemental last turn, just to get rid of that board state and play around like a Sun from my god, Spikered Steed or from the Tarim. But at the same time, you kind of want to bait out a Spikered Steed because you have the second Hex.
Yeah, there's a lot of targets for Hex in the matchup, but with double Devolve in the deck too for Kolento, he's got options. But now he's going to just go for the tempo plays. He's like, alright, I'm at 14 damage output. Whenever I pick up Bloodlust, I'm destroying this poor guy. I've got a lot of damage set up, and the odds of him having the Tyrion and Sunkeeper Tarim, Discover from Stonehill Defender, those are high, but I can contest them with the board. It's just really tricky because he knows there's a discovered card there in Pavel's hand.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, we have seen 2 discoveries from the defender, and both times those are Tarim.
Yep, sounds about like my average Paladin day.
Oh, really? I want your average Paladin day then.
Oh no, when they're facing off against me, I mean, sorry.
Oh, okay.
My Paladin days are very different, and that's a really good draw for Kolento.
Oh, that stings, man.
Didn't get much better.
Oh! Okay, this is potentially almost better for Pavel
than what was on the board at first. Oh, this is so sad. Kolento, what happened? Did you anger somebody at Blizzard? Kolento.
Awkward. That's really awkward. Healing Totem will help here. That was the Healing Totem.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Good stuff.
You can make your Fali Ellie go back to 3 HP and have a 3/2. Although it doesn't really change anything because your opponent has the poisonous Gastropod.
Yeah, you lose one guy no matter what you do.
Man.
That's gonna happen across the. I guess you could always start by Double attacking the 2/7 and then healing your Fire Alley. I think that's the line of play that leaves you with the most stuff on the board at the end of the day.
The problem is you don't maybe even want to play the Hot Spring Guardian.
Can you afford not to though?
Well, you're behind on board.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's ugly.
That's tough, man. That devolve did not do what Kolento wanted the devolve to do in the matchup. But Kolento still has, I believe, the Kalimos in the deck, and that could be a big swing card if he picks it up. That's a massive minion.
This turn, if he picks it up this turn, it matters.
Yep. One more turn, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it could, because it wipes the board, right, most of the time.
Okay, that's not terrible.
That's a sweet card.
Although in this case, he can't really race anymore because of the fact that Pavel did get 6 additional points of armor. Man. All right.
Oh, man, this is getting bad breaking. This is it. Like, there's one devolve left.
Yeah. 2 hexes and 1 devolve were already played. How will you tackle this if your opponent just has 1 out of like 13? That Spike Steed is insane here.
Yeah. So basically, Kolento's on the Bloodlust out, and otherwise, I think this game is pretty much wrapped up in favor of Pavel. This is a matchup that I think is rather even. I assume Kolento would be doing a lot better with the amount of AoE in the deck, but they didn't play a mid-range game on both sides. Pavel played a lot more of a control game for the entirety of the match, which gave no real value to those, Maelstrom portals and those lightning storms and devolves. It came down to hexing for tempo for Kolento. And when you're hexing for tempo and there's Tyrians in the deck, you're not particularly happy about it.
Okay, that's not terrible. If he hits, Airpower Totem.
If this rolls high on the 2 targets,
oh man, will it happen? It hit 1, the most important ones. So it's still not over till it's over, because now he can play time, but his opponent is drawing very powerful effects right now. Pavel is just not.
This is a very back and forth game. I mean, we've seen games go like this before, and it's kind of interesting because, like, we're now seeing the power of the AoE. But imagine a world where Pavel was developing early game instead of developing late game, right? And that lightning storm was there to break a stalemate. That would have been a lot more powerful than it is now, because it did okay here, but all it did was catch him up. But if you imagine a similar board state early where they're both vying for board control and Kolento AoE's down, that's a much stronger position for him to operate off of.
Yep.
Kolento's evaluating, can I take that 3 damage to spawn the 4-2 body?
It's actually, in this case, 9, because your opponent has Wind Fury. So every single attack is actually really impactful. Oh man, Curator. It still draws a Murloc. And probably 1 beast.
Might have a dragon left in there.
Yeah, there's the Megazord, there's the Hydrologist, and the Primordial Drake. No, just 1 Primordial Drake. Okay.
Typical mid-range things. And now that little 1-drop, Spikered Steeded, is doing a ton of work. Kolento can't possibly draw anything helpful aside from an Earth Elemental. Let's do it. Can we do that? That's nothing Kolento needed. Needed some kind of lifesaver, and that was not one of them. And Pavel's going to finally equalize the series. Paladin, of course, taking a win in the series. No big surprise there. Again, Pavel's mage is actually a druid. Just look at it. It's not a mage. That is a
druid in disguise. It's like a camouflage. We don't have camouflage yet in Hearthstone, right? Is there any card that is like similar to camouflage?
Not yet. We don't have a way to basically hide the card until it's revealed, right? There's like traps and secrets, but those are not really disguising as something else.
Maybe
we'll have that
mechanic, right? You play a minion, it has a camouflage. It's like a random minion of the same cost that the ally is actually costing, and then it reveals itself when it deals damage or is getting dealt damage.
Can you imagine the anger on Hearthstone subreddits?
Yeah, that would be like fantastic to see.
Dude, I killed a 6-drop, but it was like, it had 10 health. Like, whoa. Calm down.
It had a death rattle effect. Oh no.
Yeah, that would be amazing though to watch. I would dig it. I could see people, like there have been considerations of people saying, "Oh, this minion is going to be disguised as a secret," until it's it's triggered or something along those lines, where until they play a spell, it's nothing, and then it can still attack until when your turn comes around. So it's like a minion secret thing. It's really weird. And then some people suggested it would just be a shadow. So every single camouflage unit would be a shadow. And then you could have to figure out what exactly is being shadowed. It was interesting, like minion secrets. Anyway, we're into the Jade match now up against the Shaman. I would say this probably, if the game lasts too long, really favors the Druid player. Historically, Shamans are amazing against them, but Jade's a different game entirely, man. Like this deck just does things that no other Druid before it has done.
Yeah, and Pavel has Pavel has already Fandral in his hand, so if he can combo that with the Jade Idol, with Rafts, with whatever, like basically everything apart from Feral Rage, he's in for a treat, because that gives him a lot of very needed board presence and card advantage at the same time. Okay, I'm guessing Jade Blossom is a good choice because it's a 2/2 golem already, but at the same time, the Tar Creeper is not terrible against this board state, but it's pretty bad against Flaming Totem, because you give away a Tar Creeper just against, a measly 1/1. I mean, sorry, 1-drop. So Jade Blossom still looks good.
Does he ever coin out Maelstrom Portal here? Because I feel like at this point his hope of winning the game is going to hinge on going the widest that he possibly can ever.
And Bloodlust, right?
And then Bloodlust. Like, it's just going to be ending the game early. So either you Maelstrom for the most value you're going to get, most likely. I guess after seeing the spell damage totem, you might feel differently. I might have still done it, but...
there was some promise to actually use the Maelstrom Portal to get better value out of Flaming Totem next turn instead.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if his opponent plays Jade Spirit, you can still finish off the entire board with the Maelstrom Portal and have the Flaming Totem still on board. Well, actually, more benefit.
I think it's for the thing from below. I think it's just trying to set up for a thing from below to contest what's there. Okay. Mostly, but we'll see whether or not he sticks to that plan here.
So you think
he's got the ability to double trade?
So you think he wanted to use just the finger blow on turn 4? Interesting.
I mean, against Druid, if they don't innervate out a Tar Creeper here, it's pretty solid. I mean, it forces a double trade against Jade Spirit. This is an exception to the case where, the Druid had another play on top of just the regular 4-drops. Otherwise, I think Thing from Below was pretty solid, because if he plays Fandral on 4, you just jam the 2 minions into the Fandral, and then you have a 7/5. And if he plays a Jade Spirit, you're still getting a 5/5 or 7/5 up against a 2/3. So I really like that line of play. Overall, just ended up getting innervated out of viability suddenly.
Yeah, that's the problem with the class, right? You can't really play around scenarios that can just happen because your opponent has an innervate. Second time, Angry Chicken. That's a signal.
What is it signaling? We're watching podcasts today?
What can it be signaling? I don't know. It's like a it's like a bat signal, but for Angry Chicken.
Yeah, this is soon going to devolve into who can make the best chicken sound on stream. Wow, that was good. I'm impressed, Lothar.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can top that.
I don't think you should, but
here's the question: They realized they could. They never stopped to think whether or not they should. Oh, typical Hearthstone casting. So Kolento here is actually in a pretty rough spot because he can't deal with Fandral easily without using the Hex. And the problem with the Hex is that it doesn't let you set up anything else this turn. Sure, you're developing a totem. That's fine. You get a 2-mana thing from below. And then you can lower it down to 1 and set up a crazy tempo swing on 6 where you've got some flexibility as to what you do. But the scaling up of the enemy's minions and Jades is starting to add up. So if they hit that Nourish turn and replenish, if they hit those late-game Primordial Drakes, you're not going to be ahead for a long time. Well,
although it always feels great even to develop a totem against the Druid, because there's no easy way of just ruining those, right? Until turn 8, of course, when there's Primordial Drake. But the second thing from below, that is just fantastic for Kolento.
I think it might have been the best draw in his deck,
Ooh.
just based on the Bloodlust hand he's setting up. Because the way I'm looking at this is his turn looked like just a totem, and then you play Hot Spring Guardian, and then you get a 1-mana thing from below, which is okay. But the difference between a 2/4 here and a 5/5 and the extra 1/2 is completely insane.
Although I'm not sure about that Flame Elemental, because it goes so perfectly in line with the Primordial Drake. It just loses everything.
I mean, you're losing to Primordial Drake here. Are you losing to Swipe? You're in trouble against Swipe. That's clear. I think Kolento's just on the Bloodlust plan. He realizes the longer this goes on, the more he loses. And that's kind of the weakness of mid-range Shaman in its current form. Is it just loses... When it loses board control, it just doesn't have great tools to regain it back. Unless it's facing off against another mid-range deck, and then it gets the crazy, Lightning Storm, Tempo Swing. But those are not... They're not consistently going to come out.
Oh, I lost my screen. Okay, here we go.
All right, so another Drake looks like the obvious play for Pavel, but he could definitely choose to hold on to it and simply develop a little bit lighter on the board. Maybe ignore the Fire Elemental, even just go face, force the trade, and then set up the second Drake. Play the Ooze now to weaken and soften the board up even more. It's only going to be weak against Hot Spring Guardian if the Fire Elemental gets healed up. There are 2 of them in the deck, so it's a consideration. You've probably read a Bloodlust somewhere in there, given the card that's been sitting there for, well, all the turns.
Oh, it's an interesting play, because I was thinking like the Gluttonous Ooze and the Hero Power puts almost the same amount of damage on board, but at the same time you have an answer against the Hero Powers, and those Hero Powers will become annoying at some point. And Primordial Drake is the only answer apart from Swipe. There's no Blood Mage Finals, if I remember correctly, in Pavel's list, so basically 2 swipes are like the best option to clear those.
And now we're getting into the Druid. Draws dead until Nourish turns. Needs to get an Auctioneer or that Nourish to start getting back on the board. And we can see here, Manatide Totem, it's one of those weird cards in Shaman where it's sometimes just so dead. But this deck has its way of making the card very powerful. I mean, you've got 2 Hot Spring Guardians, 2 Tar Creepers, 2 things from below. This totem is getting protected almost every single time in the deck, which is one of the biggest reasons why it's so effective at swinging the game back in the Shaman's favor. It used to be a card that on average drew you 1 card. That's all it did. It drew you 1 card. Now it draws you upwards of 4 or 5 consistently because you're constantly barraging the board state with taunts.
Well, a lot of change in the Hearthstone world. We can see more powerful taunts being developed in the game, and in this case you can see the setup exactly with that: a 3-mana 2/4 minion that has taunt and heals, and a 4-mana taunt with Divine Shield, which is better than Dingo, helps a lot with this board state. And you want to protect that mana totem, as you said, for multiple turns, although the swipe will help a little bit.
Yeah, there's actually an Earthen Scale swipe play that's pretty sweet here.
I mean, you don't even have to
up
reference
everything
scale.
super.
You can just Hero Power instead, right?
I mean, okay, I guess the question is, what is 4 health saving me from? Fire Elemental? That might be, because you get the full clear if you Earthen Scales, right?
I just feel like
1/1 on top.
I just feel like the Earthen Scales might be more important when you will be, when your minion will be lacking that one attack to actually kill a creature that has value on its board, and just not a healing totem in this case. And it's still better to have it in your hand after your opponent will play the Devolve or Hex. We saw one Hex, no Devolves yet, right?
Yeah, no Devolves have been played yet in this matchup. And yeah, looks like Stoneclaw Totem's coming out to help. We had the Manatide that would have been vulnerable in many spots, but the Stoneclaw Totem coming off the Hero Power for Kolento is giving him another protection layer against any type of aggression from his opponent. And Earthen Scales was probably kept for the card draw in Gadgetzan. Again, he was on Nourish draw. There we go. I was going to say, he was on Nourish draw to really come back into the game because of the Manatides. And now that he picks up this crazy turn, he's actually got... This is a game again. We have a game.
Oh, look at that. I mean, he did draw actually some blanks in this case. Jade Idol's not terrible though. Oh, for Kolento it's kind of awkward. He has no elemental to play.
You could play Hero Power Jade Lightning and see if you can roll that. If you can roll that totem good. Oh,
nope.
Misplay, clearly.
I'm thinking of devolving this, but it's still a 6-mana minion. That is a 5/5. So there's a small chance it will actually have 4 HP.
To be fair, though, yeah. That's the thing, though, is that you assume your opponent's got all the removal in the hand, like Wrath and everything. He hasn't played them yet, so your Mana Tide probably dies no matter what. Protecting it is no longer the bigger question. The question is, how can I get on this board best while denying my opponent that board development? And I feel like he's got no choice but to Jade Lightning. And
attack into it? Man,
with the devolve.
sucks.
Yeah, I think he has to devolve first and then Jade and pray. This is all bad! This is
the first devolve was terrible for Kolento. The second devolve is more usual, right? Unfortunately, the Jade Lightning doesn't really give him much apart from the 1/1, which is not that pressuring, but at the same time it enables the Bloodlust. The 4/2 though, that's different story.
Yeah, you will be drawing removal away from the Mana Tide totem with that 4/2 if Pavel thinks it's threatening. I think at this stage, there's a long game coming up for Pavel if Bloodlust doesn't blow him out, right? That's the question. Or that's the worry on the back of his mind. The longer this game goes, the more favored he is.
Mm-hmm.
So just playing it super safe is perfectly acceptable. That's not an
elemental, so that's definitely problematic for Kolento. Pavel didn't use his excess mana. That means he has a second Auctioneer in his deck, or he just is covering up the misplay by not drawing first. Let me check.
No, he's clearly got a second Auctioneer.
Yes,
I think that the new Jade has to have it. New meta Jade has it. And now 7/7. Anybody talked about tough to remove minions. The 7/7 is actually a 7/9 because the Stoneclaw totem is the way we have to look at it. So it's a lot more likely against this 5/5 to survive. Because the opponent would have to spread like a swipe into it first. Oh, what?
Look at that, who showed up just in time. My god, Pavel, how do you do it every single time? Every single time we see a thing like that. Wait. Am I dumb?
Was that in the list? I've never seen this played in every game that I've watched Pavel play.
I think that's not in the list.
I don't think that I've not seen that card in
his list, right? And I didn't see it either. So I'm kind of confused here. We need to ask.
I mean, I've cast a bunch of games of this Druid deck, and I don't think I've seen a single one of them. Well, if it is in the deck legitimately, then that's interesting. It's one of these cases where it might have just been us not seeing it on stream while we were casting. But we've also had cases of... So he chose not to play BGH here, which indicates to me that he knows it's not supposed to be in the deck.
Yeah.
He didn't even play Jade Idol. Didn't even try. He would have played BGH here every time.
Yeah.
Had it been in the core list. I don't think there's any world in which you don't. The card is just too good. So he's gonna play this out as though it was not the big game hunter to give Kolento the vanilla chance of playing the game out. But the admin lists, the admin rules should probably specify that there's a loss attributed to the player if it is indeed not in the list. That being said, BGH, let's talk about this little buddy. I wonder what Pavel was doing with that card in the list. I'm guessing he was laddering with it and targeting something specific. Must have.
No clue. I mean, maybe it's a wild list and just plays around that, Dr. Boom. Oh, I guess. All right. He is going for those draws with the Auctioneer.
Tries to find himself that Jade package. Yeah, there's no way he would not have played the BGH here, I think. Unless he's not playing around Bloodlust at all. At the moment, based on the Bloodlust damage on the board that's coming up, That should be lethal in favor of Kolento. There's no taunts or armor ups coming from Pavel, and it looks like because he didn't play the Feral Rage, he's gonna be exposed to the Bloodlust and just lose anyway.
Because that's a way of conceding.
Yeah, and that Bloodlust is indeed gonna be enough for Kolento to push for the lethal, and he is going to take the game. 2-1 in the series. All right, so regardless of the admin decision on this, no worries.
It doesn't change anything here. I think just Pavel knew that it's a mistake on his part, and he just can't play the card. Basically, it's a blank, and he lost the game anyway, so no problem at all.
Well, now we're onwards to Kolento's last deck, and that is going to be the Quest Rogue, I believe. And Quest Rogue is extremely well favored against both of the decks left for Pavel. I mean, that Crystal Rogue against Jade is fantastic. Against Taunt Warrior, it's also pretty sweet. So let's go.
That is true. I mean, unless the Rogue just hits banks, which can happen with combo decks, we have seen it more than often to just draw all, like, the bounce cards without anything actually anything valuable to bounce, and just can't make the quest profitable for you. Or the other way around, you draw all those 1-drops and never draw any bouncing cards, which is also problematic, so it's even worse.
Yeah, we've had it happen before where one of the big things too is that the Warrior can actually tempo you out with taunts alone. So even if you're supposed to be able to bounce them, bounce your chargers back and kill all this stuff, if he just gets that taunt curve going, sometimes it's enough to deal too much damage to you because you end up throwing your guys to stay alive, and that puts you so far behind on the quest that you just lose the game. It's a mashup where you're really all in on the quest because the moment it's done, you snowball out of control.
Yes, that's true. So which deck would you choose as Pavel in this case?
Doesn't matter. Probably Taunt Warrior. I think Taunt Warrior is better, but since you have to beat it with both in a Conquest format, it just for morale, I'd probably play Taunt Warrior instead.
But at the same time, there's no difference in the result, right? It can be a 3-0, it can be a 3-2, it doesn't matter, because the tiebreaker for the group is actual head-to-head and not just the small points.
Yeah, so Pavel here can queue whatever he wants. It's all right. I mean, Druid has the BGH, so you're probably going to go for the Warrior anyway. Might remove it to put back the list that he had initially when submitting the deck list on the 9th of May. I expect the Warrior to come out, and it is indeed the Warrior. Highest win rate.
Warrior, but do you want to keep the quest in this situation? Because you might just want to have...
How do you win if you don't?
Well, you still have minions, right? If you just put pressure on the board instead...
Okay.
You'll be able to kill him before he does anything, but at the same time, you depend on the Rogue having just a slow opener. So that's not the best strategy overall.
Yeah, no matter what, you're going to be hoping the Rogue just starts slowly, right? Even if you mulligan the quest away. And what's important as you just kill off all the 1-drops that come out over time with your weapon. Pavel had what looked like an amazing hand with that Fiery War Axe to clean up fireflies and whatnot. But in this case, he's going to find himself just not having a target for it, which says a lot about Kolento's hand.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, I don't think you actually want to develop the Igneous Elemental here. You can just go for the Mimic Pod. Because the thing is about the Rogue is that in my eyes, it's actually the most complicated deck to play in our current metagame. It has just so many possibilities of being played out in different ways, and the Mimic Pod actually even kind of branches out those decisions further away from each other. So playing the Mimic Pod in the beginning of the game gives you more insight into what you want to do in the later stages of the game, but at the same time, the Igneous Elemental here is on curve and is usually pretty tough to get him killed in time when you need actually something to get bounced. So both, in my opinion, they are both viable to be played this turn, but at the same time, it's just the question of, do you want to have the Flame Elementals faster by a turn, most likely, or do you prefer to have insight in what you're going to do in the next turns with the Mimic Pod?
Yeah, see, we see here that Pavel just doesn't want to pop that Igneous Elemental. Has no incentives to start giving the Kolento anything. Because one of the things that Pavel reads from Kolento's hand is it's either full of chargers that you don't want to play early for no reason, or it's full of bounce effects. So if I give you the Flame Elementals, you're just going to wreck me. Or it's 2 Vanishes, 2 Preps, and a Mimic Pod. It's like, it's either blanks that are going to do nothing, or it's filled with bounce effects, essentially. And the fact that he sees this just means that he has no reason to pop the Flame Elemental to make 2 out of the 3 scenarios really disastrous. Pavel, though, will still find value with the hand that he's been given. He's got the Whirlwind if he wants to use it.
Look at that. If he would have used actually the Mimic Pod, he would have gotten Shadow Steps. That would have been sick. That's like the best draw from the Mimic Pod.
Yeah, he already has the quest complete, right? At the moment with the Flame Elementals and double bounce. I think it's just a little bit slower because it's not Shadow Step he ended up getting.
Yeah, but Shadow Steps gives you additional charges, basically, right? Or additional card draw and so on. It's like, in my eyes, Shadow Step is the best card in the deck.
There's probably is, yeah.
It's literally, if you want to play something that is a 4-off in your deck, you would probably play Shadow Steps, not a minion, just Shadow Steps, because it's a toolbox.
Yeah. It can do... If I could change Youthful Brewmaster and get Ferryman for Shadow Steps, I would.
Yeah,
most of the time you would.
Not because you want to have just more bounces in general, right?
Sure.
But it's just a crucial card.
Play more Shadow Steps.
Yep.
And the quest is going to be online for Kolento, so this turn he can pay 4 mana to get himself a lot of stuff back. But that Dirty Rat play by Pavel, super heads up, says, you know what? If I pop the Elemental and deny him one of those, he needs an extra bounce to make it happen. And that was actually Kolento's necessary bounce. And now he's going to have to Mimic Pot fetching more of these bouncers, more of the Flame Elemental generators. So 2 Fireflies in the deck, 2 Ferrymen, 1 Youthful.
Still not sure if I like that Dirty Rat though. Like, your opponent was going low on cards, and you can actually get something maybe even better than a Flame Elemental, like an actual bouncer, right? Or which then becomes useless, and or you can get the Fury. You can get the my God, the Flame, right? Not Flame. Jesus.
Firefly.
Christ. Firefly, thank you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no. The little 1/2 that spawns the Flame Elemental, so you can't deny that. You're right. Yeah.
Every single time I will forget the name of Firefly, I'll just think, what kind of series was cancelled after just 1 season? Oh, right. Firefly.
Firefly! Oh, man. The most regretted series. A lot of people, I hear, really liked it. So right now, Pavel knows that his opponent's on a 2 Flame Elemental turn, and he's thinking, okay, if he's playing this one and throwing it out there, I assume he's got more where that one came from. So he must have hit a Firefly from the Mimic Pod, had one in hand. Either way, I'm not going to be able to deny him any value, and Kolento is going to get the double Firefly play from, of course, the Mimic Pod, and he's going to get his quest online this turn, setting up 5/5s immediately.
Jesus Christ!
Indeed. And that spells trouble for Pavel.
And 3 charge minions in hand, basically, because you can bounce one of them. So that's insane. Now every single card being drawn is just a very powerful minion, and also can make a chain of draws with the Mimic Pods, with Novice Engineers, with what else draws a card there? Basically, that's it.
That's pretty much. There's like Mimic Pod number 2, Novice Engineer, and that's about it. You have like Celestia deckhand that fetches a little bit, but yep, that's the extent of your card.
But there's already patches in the hand, so that's not gonna happen. Second Dirty Rat, too late to the party.
But we probably go Bloodhoof Armor Smith set up for turn 7 Dirty Rat Brawl. That seems really strong to me. I think that if you're the Taunt Warrior, that's your best shot at making this happen. And it seems like very grimy, but you still have a lot of armor generation on the board with the Armor Smith being set up in the back there.
Yeah, that is true. You have that, but at the same time, every single minion from Kolento will be a 5/5, which will most likely outstat whatever you will play as the Taunt Warrior, unless is like the 6/9 Taunt, right? So the Hatchling, the bigger Hatchling, and you have also the potential of finishing the quest in like 4 turns, if I believe correctly, right? He was at 3 out of 7.
He's at 4 now, I believe. So
For
3
now?
turns
Wait,
before.
Damn, I didn't see it.
No, you're right. You're right. He's at 3 out of 7.
So that is really awkward. Like usually you're not able to play more than more than one taunt in one turn.
Kolento's going to play around removal here. He can't afford going all in, but that's going to give Pavel probably the best Dirty Rat Brawl he's going to get this game. I don't think there's any reason to slow down, unless if you're looking at the amount of health you have, which is, 37, you're looking safe enough from a full board of 5/5s hitting you in the face.
And the batches was being drawn. All right.
Yep. Also a pretty big deal in this spot, as it is a charger, and you don't want those connecting to your face. Odds are on Kolento's side, of course, to keep something, but if Pavel miraculously is the one to keep a minion, he'd be in.
That's quite unfortunate, because now he's not able to kill the one minion that is left, and most of the minions on Kolento's side were actually damaged. So that was quite unlucky. Now I feel like you go all in. Like
I would maybe keep a single charger for bounce effects to be live.
Okay, that's a
but
good point. Although you have
you're-
Firefly, right, on board.
Right. Because you're getting 2 minions from that one drop, you're still setting up a lethal next turn, and then you have extra bouncers in case you need to start hitting those big taunts in the way.
Well, actually not setting it up, because your opponent will be at 27 and you have 26. 28, actually.
Yeah, if he armors up, sure. Well, that's Pavel's chance here. He's got a slight chance. I mean, that 4/8 lines up well against 5/5s. Depends what this is, and that's a bouncer. Yikes!
That is 15 damage to the face, and still the entire board alive. Or sacrifice 1/5/3 and have a 5/5 charger going to his face.
Either way, you're gonna get punished by the same thing, which is gonna be brawl, I think. So
Yeah.
if something beats you, it's gonna be brawl into a taunt minion. Otherwise, you're just fine here. I think you have to bounce the Brewmaster to heal it back up, and then you can just bounce something else.
Yeah, that's a very good usage of mana. It's basically a mana sink in this situation. You get what you get value when you can get that potential value right now. My God, that was a horrible sentence to say. But still gives you access to actually lethal next turn with a charge in your hand. So I like what Kolento did here.
So we have Stonehill Defender, Bloodhoof Brave plus Execute that actually clears up the board again, or at least sets up a wall of defense that can handle what's coming. The quest is going to be completed afterwards.
But then he cannot generate any more armor. So 2 swings of minions and he's dead. He has taunts for like life, basically. In this situation, I would probably just get Pompous Thespian.
Yeah, I agree with you. Get the best 2-drop you can, just to flood, go super wide. It's effectively a 2/5 in this spot. If it doesn't die to the dagger hit, then it's got 5 health. That's the way you have to look at it in the matchup, which is what you wanted to have.
All right. What is the second card? It's a charger.
And that is going to simply end it for Kolento. That quest rogue, put the quest online,
Well,
I think.
we did speak about this matchup already. Like it's favoring the rogue. It just old values the big minions from the warrior because they don't have enough of attack to actually pair it up. To be paired up with the minions on the rogue side after the quest completion, of course. Dirty Rats can be helpful, but still wasn't enough to just draw 1 in the beginning of the game to mitigate the quest from Kolento. So not a really big surprise that the rogue did take it, right?
Yeah, I think it was sort of expected that it would take a matchup against either of the 2 decks left. Pavel queued up what he thought had the best one, but it's really tough for even a Taunt Warrior's 8 damage swings to come online early enough to really counterpoint the 5/1s. I mean, if I can deal 5 to you starting on turn 4, and you can start dealing 8 once per turn starting on turn 9, I mean, there's definitely a big difference in the way the pacing of that matchup is going to go. That being said, that is going to close out match number 1 of the day. We have 5 more to go. We've got Dr. Hippie versus Orange, I believe, coming up next. We'll see a little bit more of Pavel and Kolento later today against other opponents. We'll be right back after a short break. Oh, no, we're told there's no pause. Apparently, we don't get the pause, so no pause.
Oh, really? Okay.
We're gonna keep going, I guess. No eating for you, Lothar.
Sorry, man.
keep starving.
For you as well. You have those cashews, right?
Okay,
So-
the admins decided to bait and switch us. Apparently, there is going to be a pause, but there's not going to be a pause after the second game. So we'll be taking a short break for real. No more bait and switch from these guys, and we'll be right back.